One of the most compelling dynamics of HBO's House of the Dragon is the love-hate relationship between its competing rivals, Rhaenyra Targaryen and Alicent Hightower. It helps that the actresses portraying them are so well immersed in the role that they can really sell you on their complex relationship. In this video, we'll be talking about an instance where even the actresses themselves overestimate the complexity of their dynamic. First, we might have seen the two characters share a kiss. That's what Millie Alcock and Emily Carey said about their time filming the 4th episode of the season. Specifically, they felt the sparks popping between each other during a scene where the two of them were sitting on a bench together and having a bonding moment. Carey talked to the New York Times about the moment, and she had a conversation with Millie afterward, asking if she thought they were going to kiss. Turns out, Millie felt the same way. If Rhaenyra and Alicent were about to kiss, episode 4 was probably the one where it was going to happen. Titled King of the Narrow Sea, the episode explores the contrast between the love lives of the two girls. On one hand, Alicent is stuck in a dispassionate marriage with King Viserys, raising his kids and being ready for a tumble in the sack whenever the king wants one. On the other hand, her former friend and also daughter is chafing under her obligation to marry a suitable nobleman. Rhaenyra has quite a few escapades in the episode. She ventures out into the streets of King's Landing with Daemon, before almost making love to her crazy uncle, and after returning to her chambers, she gives in to her attraction to Kingsguard Knight Criston Cole. These adventures could totally have been topped off with a makeout sesh with Alicent. Coming up, the idea didn't pop into the actresses' minds out of nowhere. Carey and Alcock told Insider that the romantic subtext was an intentional part of the way these two characters were written. You can see throughout the first half of the season that the two are physically intimate, possibly more so than friends normally are. Alcock even joked that she's actually just in love with Emily. Speaking of Emily, she's a queer woman herself, and so she wanted to clarify this subtext with director Claire Kilner. In Carey's opinion, the relationship between teen girls who are best friends is closer than any other relationship you could experience. She even describes it as one that toes the line between a romantic and platonic relationship. Millie describes it as a tactile closeness combined with emotional closeness. And these feelings would run higher in an environment like the Red Keep, where they're the only two teenage girls. So the two girls were never actually in love, which might be disappointing for some House of the Dragon fans who were theorizing about it, but we were very much supposed to get those vibes. So the writers and directors have done their jobs right. As for the actual nature of their relationship, they describe it as an all-consuming love that the teen girls simply don't understand, and one that doesn't come naturally in a place like the Red Keep. Now, this new information actually recontextualizes a big part of that episode. After Rhaenyra's midnight adventures in King's Landing, Otto Hightower finds out about her indiscretions and reports them to her dad, the king. Obviously, Viserys isn't thrilled about this, but Alicent is also really hurt by the news. And while we know that Rhaenyra's lying to Alicent will eventually get her dad sent home, it's interesting to wonder why Alicent was mad at Rhaenyra before that. When Alicent confronts Rhaenyra, she scolds her for neglecting her duties and decorum as a noblewoman. Could there be more to this tongue-lashing though? Does Alicent feel that Rhaenyra has been unfaithful to her? Hear us out. We don't actually think that Alicent and Rhaenyra were ever gonna, sleep together, but their shared experience of life at King's Landing is what drew them into their intensely close relationship. The bond they have is founded on the realities they deal with as a part of life in court, but by cavorting around King's Landing and hooking up with any knight or uncle she likes, Rhaenyra exposes an uncomfortable truth about their friendship. The fact that Rhaenyra does all this, and it's Alicent's dad who gets punished for it, shows that these two girls aren't the same, and that's the betrayal she feels from her best friend. Moving on, if you think about it, this animosity has continued into their adulthood. There's no all-consuming love between the adult versions of Alicent and Rhaenyra, as portrayed by Emma Darcy and Olivia Cooke. They totally hate each other, and it would be very hard to salvage a friendship from what's left of it. And yet, Alicent could stand to be a bit more reticent about her feelings towards Rhaenyra, scheming against her behind the scenes. But throughout the years that were buried into the time skips, Rhaenyra has continued to prove that she's a princess. And Alicent is just a king's wife. The princess is living in an open marriage with a gay man, an arrangement where both of the couple can sleep around, while still benefiting from the strategic match between them. And now that Rhaenyra has illegitimate children, those kids are destined to inherit the Iron Throne and Driftmark. From Alicent's point of view, Rhaenyra can get away with anything. As a teen, she might not have been convinced with her dad's opinion that her best friend was too dangerous to sit on the throne, but they're definitely on the same page now. Not only is Rhaenyra too spoiled and careless to be on the throne, but she doesn't even deserve it. Now her son, whom she wants to install on the throne, is so much worse than Rhaenyra, but there's no accounting for a mother's love. Next up, this dynamic doesn't exist in the books. House of the Dragon takes its story from the pages of George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire novels. The war called the Dance of the Dragons has been covered in many places in that saga, but the primary source of details about it is in a summary of the conflict that can be found in Fire and Blood. That book is credited as the source material for the show, yet the show has made some pretty major deviations from the events as written in the books. In some cases, characters are portrayed entirely different in HBO's version of the tale. One example of this is the friendship between Alicent and Rhaenyra, which simply wasn't a thing in the books. It's a slight tweak, the sort of thing you could blame on an incomplete writing of history, but this slight tweak does so much to enrich the conflict that brews between them. The elements of jealousy, betrayal, and the general tragedy of friends becoming enemies is something that could only happen if the two had a close relationship. And that's why this was one of the best changes the show could have made to the story. In fact, we'd bet that George was kicking himself for not coming up with that detail himself. Now in other news, first up, Season 1 is almost over, and that means that pretty soon we'll be pounding our fist on the table chanting, "We want more." Unfortunately, we'll be waiting a fair bit for the second season to come out. While work has started on the second season, filming is expected to continue all the way through summer 2023. And for a show like this, there's gonna be a lot of CG work to do, estimated at almost a year's worth. So about the earliest we can expect Season 2 is summer 2024, maybe around August. These will be the longest 2 years since Season 7 of Game of Thrones ended. Part of the problem here is that HBO was wary about continuing the Game of Thrones franchise. After the backlash against the show's ending, they were conservative in their recommitment to the series, and only greenlit one season of the House of the Dragon. That decision is coming back to bite them now, as their cold feet have led to a late start on Season 2's production. Up next, here's how long George R.R. Martin thinks the show should run. While the Dance of the Dragons will soon be underway, there's a lot of ground to cover. In the expert opinion of the guy who dreamed it all up, it would take the show 4 seasons of 10 episodes each to do justice to the story. By contrast, he felt that Game of Thrones needed 10 seasons at minimum, with ideally 12 or 13 seasons in total. Finally, we have good news for fans of Sarah Hess. If you've been enjoying what Hess has brought to the table as one of the lead writers on House of the Dragon, you can look forward to seeing more from her. HBO has signed her up for 2 more years with the network, where she'll be developing original projects. Hess's credits aside from House include the medical drama House and Orange is the New Black. That's it for today's video. Did you notice a romantic tension between Alicent and Rhaenyra? Do you wish that the tension had gone further? Or were you happy with the way it was done in the show? Let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.